She cheated and left me for a rich banker, so I canceled my $20 billion deal and watched them crumble. My name is Noah Carter, and I've spent the last decade building something indestructible. At 35 years old, I am the owner and CEO of Carter Holdings, a multinational investment firm that has its hands in everything from real estate to private equity. But power and wealth were not handed to me. I had to fight for every inch, every deal, every opportunity. 3 years ago, I was not the man I am today. I was just another ambitious entrepreneur, grinding away, trying to make something of myself. I was married then to a woman who I thought would stand beside me through thick and thin, Isabella Moore. She was beautiful, intelligent, and driven, but she had one fatal flaw. She craved success more than she craved loyalty. At the time, Carter Holdings was still in its infancy. Though I had vision and potential, I was not the man at the top, not yet. Isabella, however, had no patience for a man in the process of building an empire. She wanted a man who already had one. That's when Liam Preston entered the picture, a hedge fund manager with a slick tongue and an obscene amount of money. He represented everything Isabella wanted: fast wealth, flashy luxury, and immediate power. And just like that, she walked away. I can still remember the night she left. She sat across from me at our dining table, her fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass as she carefully chose her words. "Oh, Noah, I don't think this is working anymore," she said, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. I looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw it in her eyes. She had already made up her mind. She had already moved on. I asked her the question that had been gnawing at me for weeks. "Is there someone else?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second. That was all the answer I needed. "And I just want a different life," she said instead, evading the question. "I want stability. I want to be with someone who can give me the life I deserve, the life she deserved." At that moment, I realized I had been nothing more than a stepping stone to her. She saw my ambition, my drive, but she wasn't willing to wait for the moment when it all paid off. She wanted a shortcut, and she found it in Liam Preston. She left me that night, packed her bags, and disappeared into a world of private jets, luxury vacations, and the kind of superficial glamour she'd always craved. For 3 years, I let her go. I focused on my work, channeled every ounce of my energy into Carter Holdings. While she was attending exclusive galas and posting about her extravagant life, I was working, planning, building. And now, 3 years later, the tables have turned in a way she never could have predicted. I sit in a sleek, glass-walled conference room, surrounded by top executives and legal teams, staring at the names printed on the contract before me: Preston Holdings, a $2 billion investment deal, one of the biggest of the decade, a deal that will determine the future of their company. And they have no idea that I am the one holding the final decision. Liam and Isabella are on the other side of this deal, convinced they are about to secure an investment that will elevate their company to new heights. I can already imagine the arrogance in Liam's tone, the confidence in Isabella's stride. They think they are untouchable. They don't know that Carter Holdings isn't just another investor at the table. It's my company, and I have been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time. I sat in the shadows of the lavish bar inside the high-rise hotel, watching as Liam Preston and Isabella Moore reveled in their own arrogance. They had no idea I was there, no idea I was even in the same city, let alone at the same table of negotiations. They thought they had it in the bag. Liam had always been the type to flaunt wealth he hadn't actually earned. Unlike me, who built my company from nothing but hard work and calculated risk, he had inherited his initial capital through family connections, leveraged it recklessly, and rode the market like a spoiled gambler who never imagined he could lose. His kind always believed they were untouchable, until they weren't. I watched as he swirled his whiskey, leaning back in his chair, speaking just loud enough for everyone around to hear. It was always a performance with him. "Tina's deal is going to define the next decade," Liam said, his voice dripping with self-importance. "If Carter Holdings wants in, they better be ready to prove they deserve a seat at the table." I nearly laughed at that. The audacity. If only he knew. Isabella was next to him, dressed in a sleek designer dress, looking every bit the polished high society woman she had always dreamed of becoming. But I could see it, even from my seat in the distance. The slight tightness around her eyes, the way she leaned in just a little too much when Liam spoke, as if she needed reassurance that she was still on the winning side. 3 years ago, she had walked away from me without hesitation. No doubt she had expected never to look back, certain that I would fade into obscurity while she ascended to the world she believed she belonged in. And yet, here we were. What neither of them knew was that I owned the very company they were seeking investment from, that every executive they had met so far worked for me, that the people they had spoken down to, dismissed as small players in this negotiation, were taking their cues from me. I had deliberately stayed in the background, watching them operate, letting them show me exactly who they were. and they had not disappointed. Carter Holdings isn't as powerful as people say, Liam continued, chuckling as he took another sip of his drink. Oh, they've been expanding, sure, but this deal is their golden ticket. Without us, they won't get a foot into this industry. I exchanged a glance with my CFO, Lucas, who sat at the bar beside me, nursing a glass of bourbon. He smirked. These guys really have no clue, he muttered under his breath. Oh, no, they don't, I said, tapping my fingers against the glass in front of me. Liam and Isabella continued talking, oblivious to the truth. They saw Carter Holdings as just another investment firm, eager for a piece of their empire. They thought they were in control. Isabella's voice was smooth, confident. This deal will solidify everything we've worked for, she said. Once we get Carter Holdings to sign, we'll be unstoppable. Oh, I noted silently. She had always been like this, aligning herself with whoever she believed was winning, attaching herself to power like a vine seeking the strongest tree. Once she had looked at me the way she now looked at Liam. Once she had believed in my potential, until she decided potential wasn't enough. It would be almost tragic if it weren't so satisfying. Lucas leaned in. Should we give them a preview of what's coming? Not yet. I took a sip of my drink, savoring the moment. Let them keep believing they're in control. The longer they think they have the upper hand, the harder they'll fall. Liam laughed again, shaking his head. It's actually kind of funny. Carter Holdings probably thinks they have leverage. I guarantee you they'll take whatever scraps we offer them. I raised an eyebrow. Scraps. Lucas let out a low whistle. This is going to be brutal. So it was, I thought, but not in the way Liam thought. I watched as he waved over the bartender, ordering another round of drinks. He was celebrating already, convinced of his own invincibility. And Isabella, she was glowing, her gaze filled with admiration as she clung to the man she had chosen over me. I wondered how she would look when she realized the truth, when she found out that the man she left in the dust now held the fate of her entire world in his hands. They thought this deal would make or break Carter Holdings. What they didn't realize was that it would actually break them. Liam leaned back, lifting his glass in a mock toast. To the future, he said, smirking. I smiled to myself, lifting my own glass from my spot at the bar. To the future, I murmured, because in less than 24 hours their future would belong to me. The boardroom was a glass-walled masterpiece, towering above the city skyline. The conference table stretched long, polished to perfection, surrounded by high-backed leather chairs that screamed power and wealth. Everything about this room was designed to impress, to intimidate, to set the stage for the kind of high-stakes decisions that shaped entire industries. Today, it would be the backdrop for something far more entertaining. I walked in without fanfare, dressed in a crisp dark suit, my tie knotted with precision. My presence was unassuming, just another executive taking a seat at the far end of the table, away from the immediate conversation. I wasn't here to be the center of attention. Not yet. My senior executives were already seated, reviewing documents and preparing for the investment proposal. I had deliberately instructed them not to reveal my identity just yet. I wanted to watch. I wanted to see how they carried themselves when they thought they were in control. And just as expected, Liam and Isabella entered like they owned the place. Isabella stepped in first, her heels clicking against the marble floor with practiced confidence. She wore an ivory-colored business suit, her hair in loose waves, and her expression radiated power. Or at least the illusion of it. She had always been good at appearances. She carried herself like a woman who had it all, but I knew better. That confidence would crack soon enough. Liam followed, his usual smirk in place, wearing an expensive charcoal suit with cufflinks that probably cost more than most people's rent. He carried himself like a man who had already won, like a king stepping into his own castle. I sat motionless, my hands folded in front of me, watching. They didn't even glance in my direction. They didn't recognize me. I had expected as much. It had been 3 years, and I had changed. I had refined everything about myself, my presence, my demeanor, my entire approach to power. I wasn't the struggling entrepreneur Isabella had walked away from. I wasn't the man trying to prove his worth. I was the worth. So let's get started, gentlemen, Liam said smoothly as he took his seat, exuding confidence. He leaned back, adjusting his watch, another expensive accessory that symbolized his wealth. Assume Carter Holdings has already reviewed the investment proposal. We're here to finalize the terms. I remained silent, letting my CFO, Lucas, lead the conversation. Lucas nodded, flipping through the thick packet of documents in front of him. We have reviewed everything, yes, but before we move forward, we need to clarify a few things. Liam barely concealed his irritation. He didn't like to be questioned. There's not much to clarify, he said. When the terms are all outlined, Carter Holdings wants in, we welcome the investment. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, gentlemen. Preston Holdings is set to dominate the next decade. Lucas smirked slightly, casting a glance in my direction before looking back at Liam. We appreciate the enthusiasm, Lucas said coolly. Oh, but Carter Holdings doesn't rush into deals based on excitement alone. Liam's smirk tightened. But what excitement? He let out a short laugh. This isn't about excitement, it's about numbers. The projections speak for themselves. If you're hesitating, maybe Carter Holdings isn't as bold as we thought. I saw it then. The subtle flicker in Isabella's expression, the way her eyes darted toward Lucas, calculating. She had always been smart. She knew something was off. We were under the impression that Carter Holdings was eager to expand into this sector, Isabella said, her voice smooth. So our investors were told this was a priority acquisition. Are you suggesting otherwise? Lucas chuckled under his breath. Oh, it's a priority, all right. Liam frowned. Oh, then what's the holdup? I let the silence stretch for a few seconds before I finally spoke. The holdup is that we're still deciding if it's worth our time. The shift in energy was instant. Isabella's head snapped in my direction. Liam furrowed his brows, finally registering that someone else had spoken. I leaned forward, my hands resting on the table, and met their stares head-on. Recognition dawned in Isabella's eyes first. Her lips parted slightly, confusion flickering across her expression. She knew my voice. And then realization crashed into her like a tidal wave. Her breath hitched. Noah, she whispered, disbelief coating her voice. Liam blinked, his confidence wavering for the first time. Wait. His eyes scanned my face, as if trying to reconcile the memory of the man he had once dismissed with the one sitting before him now. I smiled, slow and deliberate. It's been a while. Isabella looked as if she had seen a ghost. Liam, however, recovered quickly, forcing out a chuckle. Well, this is unexpected. He tried to mask his unease with casual arrogance, but I could see the tension in his jaw. And I had no idea you were involved with Carter Holdings. And you wouldn't, I said simply. He let out another forced laugh, leaning back in his chair. So, what are you? A junior partner here? A consultant? I tilted my head slightly. Something like that. His confidence returned. He thought he had figured me out. That's great, he said, his smirk resurfacing. A familiar face. That should make this deal easier. I chuckled. Should it? Isabella was still staring at me, her face pale. You're with Carter Holdings, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I met her gaze, holding it steady. Not quite. Liam scoffed, waving a hand. I don't care what role you have here, Noah. This deal is a golden opportunity, and I assume your bosses will want to hear what we have to offer. Lucas coughed into his fist, barely suppressing his amusement. I exhaled slowly, then leaned back in my chair. Ian, the boss. The boss. Silence. A thick, suffocating silence filled the room, pressing down on them like an unbearable weight. Isabella's face drained of all color. Liam's smirk vanished, his lips parting slightly, but no words came out. I watched the realization settle over them, the moment when the truth hit like a wrecking ball. I wasn't a junior partner, I wasn't a consultant, I wasn't an executive taking notes for someone else. I was the owner, the CEO, the man who held their entire future in his hands. Liam swallowed hard, his bravado crumbling at the edges. Oh, Hugh! His voice cracked slightly before he forced himself to straighten. So you run Carter Holdings? I smiled, unbothered. Surprised? Isabella inhaled sharply, still struggling to process. Her hands clenched slightly on the table. How? How is that possible? I shrugged. 30 years is a long time. Liam opened his mouth, then closed it, his mind scrambling for something, anything, to regain control of the conversation. But there was nothing. Because the power he thought he had, the deal he thought he controlled, it all belonged to me now. The gala was held at one of the most exclusive 5-star hotels in the city. A sprawling venue adorned with crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, and a breathtaking view of the skyline from its open-air terrace. It was the kind of event designed to exude power and exclusivity, a gathering of business moguls, investors, and industry leaders. And tonight, it was the stage for something far more entertaining. I arrived fashionably late, stepping into the grand ballroom with quiet confidence. The crowd was already thick with the elite, sipping expensive champagne, exchanging fake pleasantries, and basking in their own wealth. The atmosphere buzzed with the sound of clinking glasses, light laughter, and the murmur of deals being brokered in hushed voices. I spotted Liam Preston immediately. He stood near the center of the room, his presence commanding attention. Dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, he had a whiskey glass in hand and was deep in conversation with a group of executives, no doubt trying to impress them with exaggerated tales of his own success. And beside him, Isabella. She wore a deep emerald gown that hugged her figure, her hair styled in elegant waves, her jewelry expensive but tasteful. From the outside, she still carried the aura of a woman who had it all, but I knew better now. As I made my way through the crowd, I overheard snippets of conversation. People were buzzing about the Preston Holdings investment deal, some excited, others skeptical. They all assumed Liam and Isabella were poised to secure the deal of the year, none of them realizing the truth, none of them realizing that deal was already dead. Lucas, my CFO, nudged my arm slightly as he passed by, his eyes filled with amusement. "Wanna stay still, don't know," he muttered under his breath. "Not yet," I said, taking a sip of my drink. "But they will." As I moved closer to Liam and Isabella's circle, Liam's voice carried over the chatter. "This deal is practically signed," he was saying, his usual cocky grin in place. "So Carter Holdings knows what's at stake. They need this investment just as much as we do." A few of the executives laughed, nodding in agreement. Isabella smiled, resting her hand lightly on Liam's arm. "So once the final signatures are in place, Preston Holdings will be untouchable," she added smoothly. I chuckled to myself. Untouchable. Liam's gaze flickered toward me then, and for a brief moment, there was no recognition in his eyes. He saw just another businessman at the event, someone he didn't care to acknowledge. But then Isabella followed his gaze and froze. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I saw it immediately, the flicker of panic. Liam frowned, glancing between us. "Something wrong, babe?" Isabella quickly masked her expression, forcing a tight smile. "Nothing," she said, too quickly, dropping her gaze. Liam barely paid it any mind, already turning back to his conversation. But Isabella, she kept glancing at me from the corner of her eye, her mind racing. She knew something was off. I let them stew in their ignorance for a while longer, mingling, exchanging pleasantries with other industry leaders, all while keeping them in my peripheral vision. Then came the moment that changed everything. Liam, emboldened by alcohol and his own arrogance, noticed me standing nearby and smirked. "Well, if it isn't the guy lurking in the shadows." The surrounding group chuckled. I merely raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. He lifted his glass in a mock toast. "Enjoying the party, mister?" I smiled. "Carter." The laughter died. Liam's smirk wavered, confusion flickering across his face. "What?" The realization dawned on Isabella first, and I saw it in her expression, the horror of putting the pieces together too late. "Noah Carter," I said smoothly, letting my name settle over them like a thundercloud. "CEO of Carter Holdings." The blood drained from Liam's face. "Aye." His voice cracked, disbelief written all over him. The murmurs around us grew louder as people caught on to what was happening. I could see the whispers traveling through the crowd, heads turning, confusion giving way to amusement as the truth spread like wildfire. Liam swallowed, trying to recover. "Well, that's quite the surprise." He forced a chuckle. "Didn't expect to see you in this position." I took a slow sip of my drink. Clearly, the discomfort in his posture was delicious, but he wasn't about to back down, not yet. Instead, he did what insecure men do best when they feel threatened. He lashed out. With a sudden, exaggerated smirk, he turned to Isabella. "You know, babe, I never understood why you wasted your time with certain people." I knew what he was doing, trying to re-establish control, trying to turn the situation into a joke at my expense. I remained calm, watching him, letting him dig his own grave. And then, in front of the entire room, he did something I didn't expect. Liam grabbed a nearby glass of water, lifted it with a sneer, and threw it in my face. The cold liquid splashed over me, dripping down my face and onto my suit. The entire ballroom fell silent. A stunned hush settled over the crowd, eyes wide, mouths slightly open. No one could believe what had just happened. Liam stood there, smug, thinking he had just humiliated me in front of the city's most powerful people. I exhaled slowly, wiping my face with my hand. Then, in the calmest, steadiest voice, I said, "And our $20 billion deal is off, effective immediately." The silence deepened. Liam's smirk evaporated. "What?" I pulled my phone from my pocket, pressed a button, and let the room hear what I had been waiting for. A high-ranking Carter Holdings investor's voice echoed over the speakers. "If Noah Carter doesn't approve this deal, we're pulling out of Preston Holdings entirely." Isabella's breath hitched. The air turned ice cold. Liam's hands trembled. "Wait, hold on." I pocketed my phone and adjusted my suit, still damp from the water. "Does you think you hold all the cards, Liam?" My voice was low, controlled. "You think you're the king of the room?" I stepped forward, my presence towering over him. "So you thought Carter Holdings needed this deal?" I let a slow, amused smile spread across my lips. You had it backwards." Isabella looked like she wanted to disappear. Liam. He just stood there, shaking his head, unable to comprehend the catastrophe unfolding before him. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough that only they could hear. "And I built myself from the ground up. You inherited your power. I let the weight of my words settle. So now, I'm taking it away." Then, without another word, I turned on my heel and walked away. Behind me, the whispers erupted into full-blown chaos. For a moment, the entire ballroom stood still, the weight of my words hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. The same executives who had been laughing with Liam minutes ago were now frozen, their expressions ranging from shock to pure disbelief. Liam's face had lost all color, his usual arrogance replaced with something foreign, fear. Isabella. She didn't even breathe. I could see the calculations running through her mind, the slow realization that everything she had built, everything she had left me for, was crumbling right in front of her. The $2 billion deal, the deal that was supposed to solidify Preston Holdings as an untouchable empire, was gone. And worse, everyone in the room had just witnessed it. I turned, walking away from them with slow, deliberate steps, the murmur of hushed whispers already rising behind me. I could hear people piecing it together, the questions flying between them. Noah Carter, as in Carter Holdings? So, he was married to Isabella, wasn't he? Wait, does that mean he was the one in charge all along? Lucas caught up with me near the bar, his lips twitching with amusement. "That was brutal," he murmured under his breath. I took a slow sip of my drink. "Not brutal enough." Lucas let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "Oh, and you do realize he's about to come undone in front of the entire city, right?" I glanced back toward Liam, who still hadn't moved, his whiskey glass trembling in his grip. Isabella had turned toward him, whispering something urgent in his ear, but he wasn't listening. He was too busy watching his world fall apart. "Could," I said simply. The power in the room had shifted. People were no longer looking at Liam. They were looking at me, and Liam, he could feel it. He could feel the eyes on him, feel the way people were already starting to distance themselves, sensing the collapse before it even happened. The panic in his expression was unmistakable. I turned back to my drink, content to let the consequences unfold. But then he snapped. "Do you think this is over?" Liam's voice rang out across the ballroom, raw and desperate. The whispers died slowly. I turned to face him, raising an eyebrow. Liam shoved his drink onto the table, the glass tipping over, spilling golden liquid across the expensive linens. His hands curled into fists at his sides as he glared at me, shaking with rage. "And you think you can walk in here and humiliate me?" he spat. "You think you can just take away my deal?" I tilted my head. "Oh, I don't think, Liam. I know." His nostrils flared, his entire body trembling with barely contained fury. Isabella, realizing how bad this was getting, grabbed his arm. "Liam, stop," she whispered urgently. "This isn't the place." But Liam wasn't listening. He ripped his arm from her grasp and took a step forward, jabbing a finger in my direction. "Oh, you were nothing when she left you, he hissed. "Nothing. And now you think you're better than me?" I let the insult roll off me, unimpressed. "No, Liam." I met his furious gaze head-on, unshaken, unmoved. "And I don't think I'm better than you." I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough for the words to cut deeper. "And I know I am." The room erupted. There were gasps, murmurs. The tension in the air was thick, electric. Liam lost it. His face twisted in pure rage, and for a moment I genuinely thought he was about to throw a punch. His hands twitched at his sides, his body vibrating with unchecked emotion. But then he realized where he was. He realized who was watching. Investors, executives, media, people who had just minutes ago been his allies. Now they weren't so sure. I could see it in their faces. Doubt, hesitation. Liam's downfall wasn't happening behind closed doors. It was happening in public, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His breathing was ragged, his face flushed with humiliation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he let out a short, bitter laugh. "Oh, you'll regret this," he muttered, his voice venomous. I held his gaze, calm, unbothered. "So I don't regret much, Liam. And I sure as hell won't regret this." Liam clenched his jaw so tightly I thought his teeth might crack. He turned abruptly, pushing past the onlookers as he stormed out of the ballroom. Isabella hesitated, torn between following him and staying to salvage her reputation. But she knew it was too late. Her perfect world was shattered, and as she turned her eyes back to me, something flickered in her gaze. Not anger, not even hatred, regret. I watched as she exhaled shakily, then turned on her heel and followed Liam out of the ballroom. The moment they disappeared, the whispers began again, but this time they were louder. Lucas grinned, lifting his drink toward me in a silent toast. "Oh, fat," he said, "was legendary." I merely took another sip of my whiskey, unfazed, because this was only the beginning. Liam Preston thought he had power. He thought he was untouchable. But tonight, he learned the truth. He had never been the one in control, and now he had everything to lose. Liam Preston's downfall didn't happen gradually. It happened all at once. By the time I stepped into my office the next morning, the impact of last night's disaster was already sending shockwaves through the business world. Preston Holdings' stock price plummeted by 30% within hours. Major investors panicked and started pulling their funds. Financial news outlets were calling it the most public business humiliation of the year, and I hadn't even done anything yet. I sat at my desk, scrolling through the latest headlines, as Lucas entered my office, a cup of coffee in his hand and a smirk on his face.
AIM've officially ruined the man, and it hasn't even been 24 hours.
I chuckled, setting my phone down. She ruined himself. I just gave him the push. Lucas sat across from me, shaking his head. The board at Preston Holdings is in a complete frenzy. Half of them are blaming him for losing the Carter Holdings deal, and the other half is trying to figure out how to salvage their sinking ship. I leaned back in my chair, completely at ease. Let me guess. They're scrambling to secure another investor? Lucas nodded. Bonde reached out to one of their biggest stakeholders this morning. He grinned. And turns out they don't have confidence in Liam anymore. They're looking for an exit strategy instead. I exhaled slowly, feeling nothing but satisfaction. Liam had spent years convincing everyone around him that he was untouchable, that his success was inevitable. But now, with one deal gone, the cracks in his empire were becoming impossible to ignore, and it was only getting worse. Lucas tossed a folder onto my desk. You might want to take a look at this." I flipped it open, my eyes scanning the documents inside. It was worse than I thought. Liam hadn't just lost the Carter Holdings investment. His reckless spending and mismanagement were finally catching up to him. He had been using company funds to finance his lifestyle. He had been making high-risk investments without proper board approval. And now, with no financial cushion to fall back on, his company was bleeding out. I let out a low whistle. It's amazing how quickly everything crumbles when you take away their safety net. Lucas chuckled. And I think he's still in denial. He probably thinks he can smooth talk his way out of this. I shook my head. Not this time. I had spent years watching men like Liam Preston, men who climbed to the top on nothing but arrogance and deception. They believed that if they acted like winners long enough, the world would never see them fall. But the truth? The moment you strip away the illusion, all they have left is panic. And right on cue, my phone rang. I didn't even have to check the caller ID. I knew exactly who it was. Lucas grinned.
"Oh, I'm guessing it's the man himself."
I nodded, answering the call. "Plium." The voice on the other end was unsteady, but he was still trying, still clinging to whatever was left of his bravado. "Noah," Liam said, forcing a chuckle that sounded far too strained to be natural. "Look, about last night. Things got a little out of hand. I think we both know that—" I leaned back in my chair, amused. He was already trying to backpedal. "Did they?" I asked casually. "Because from where I was standing, everything went exactly as it should have." Liam exhaled sharply. "Noah, listen, we don't have to be enemies here. I was out of line at the gala, I can admit that. But business is business. We both know how the game is played." I let the silence stretch for a moment, let him sweat. Then finally, I spoke. "Is that why your investors are pulling out?" Liam inhaled sharply. I had struck a nerve. "I don't know what you're talking about," he muttered. "Come on, Liam," I said, my voice calm. "I know everything. Your stock price is in free fall. Your board is turning against you, and now your biggest stakeholders are looking for an exit." Another stretch of silence, then Liam finally cracked. "You think you're so damn smart, don't you?" he hissed. I smiled. "No, Liam. I know I am." His breathing was ragged on the other end. He was furious, desperate. "You want to know what your problem is, Noah?" Liam spat. "You act like you're above everyone else, like you're untouchable. But let me tell you something, you're not—" I chuckled. Funny. That's exactly what people used to say about you. Liam lost it. You think you won? This isn't over, Carter. You might have embarrassed me, but I'm still standing. I shook my head. Not for long. I didn't respond, just let his own frustration fill the silence, and then he hung up. Lucas raised an eyebrow. That was fun. I exhaled slowly, setting my phone down. T's unraveling. Lucas smirked. It's only the beginning. We both knew it. Liam wasn't just dealing with a public embarrassment, he was about to lose everything. And the best part? I didn't even have to lift a finger. Liam Preston was a man who thrived on control. He built his entire image around the illusion of power, walking into rooms as if he owned them, speaking as if his words dictated the economy, and treating people as if they were beneath him. But today, for the first time, Liam Preston was powerless. By the time the sun set, Preston Holdings was in free fall. Their stock had dropped another 15% by mid-afternoon. Major investors had called an emergency board meeting. Whispers of financial fraud had reached the SEC, triggering an early-stage investigation. And Liam, he was drowning. I sat in my office, watching it unfold from a distance, listening as my team gave me the latest updates. Lucas, ever the bearer of amusing news, leaned against my desk with his tablet in hand, smirking. And the board is voting tonight, he said, shaking his head. So they're going to push him out. I leaned back in my chair, completely relaxed. Took them long enough. Lucas let out a short laugh. They're ruthless when they smell blood. And Liam, he's bleeding out fast. I wasn't surprised. The moment confidence in a leader faltered, the sharks always circled, and Liam had made too many enemies along the way. Still, I knew men like him. He wouldn't go down without a fight. He would cling to whatever scraps of power he had left, refuse to accept the reality staring him in the face. And that's exactly what happened. At precisely 7:42 in the evening, Liam walked into the emergency board meeting. His shoulders were squared, his posture stiff, but his eyes were frantic. He was a man who had never been in this position before. The room was filled with his own board members, men and women he had once commanded with ease. But tonight, they weren't looking at him as their leader. They were looking at him as a liability. And let's get straight to the point, one of the senior board members said, steepling his fingers. Liam, we've reviewed the situation and there's no denying the damage. Liam forced a smile, but it was weak. Look, I understand there's concern, but this is just a temporary setback. Carter Holdings was never the only option for investment. We can pivot. Silence. No one agreed. Another board member, an older woman with sharp eyes, cleared her throat. We have reason to believe that your handling of company funds has been questionable. Liam's jaw clenched. That's ridiculous. Every decision I've made has been in the best interest of this company. The senior board member sighed. Liam, the SEC has already started preliminary inquiries into our financial records. If there's even a hint of fraud, we'll all be held responsible. Liam's hands tightened into fists. You're throwing me under the bus after everything I've done for this company? Honest company, the man said, his voice cool, and is bigger than you. And just like that, the reality hit him. Liam was no longer the king. He was expendable. The final blow came from his most trusted ally, his own CFO, Mark Bennett. Mark had been Liam's right-hand man for years, the one who covered for him, who helped smooth over his reckless financial choices. But tonight, when Liam turned to him for support, Mark stood with the board. It's over, Liam, Mark said, his voice even. When a vote is unanimous, the board has decided you're out. Liam staggered back. No, he whispered. Well, no, you can't do this. No, we just did, Mark said. Well, resignation will be announced first thing in the morning. The room fell into silence. Liam was finished. His breath came in shallow gasps, his entire body stiff as he processed the fact that he had lost everything. And then his phone buzzed. He looked down, his face contorting as he saw the name flashing on the screen, Isabella, his wife, his last remaining ally. Liam picked up the call, his voice sharp. Where the hell are you? Isabella's voice trembled on the other end. Liam, we need to talk. Talk? He laughed bitterly, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I just got betrayed by my own board, and you want to talk? There was a long pause. Then, softly, Liam, I'm leaving. His world stopped. What? His voice was barely a whisper. And I packed my things, Isabella continued, her voice strangely emotionless. I'm moving out tonight. Liam gripped the phone tighter. You're joking? I'm not. Liam let out a sharp, humorless laugh. You're leaving me now? After everything? So I can't stay, Isabella said simply. It's over. Liam's breath hitched. No, he whispered, shaking his head, even though she couldn't see him. Oh no, you don't get to walk away. Not now. Isabella exhaled slowly. You know what I realized, Liam? Silence. And I left the wrong man. That was it. That was the moment Liam broke, because he knew exactly who she meant. Noah. He rasped. Isabella didn't deny it. Instead, she simply said, Shoot guy, Liam. And then, just like that, she hung up. Liam stood there, the phone still pressed against his ear, his entire world collapsing around him. The company, gone. His reputation, destroyed. His wife, leaving. He had lost everything. And the worst part? It was all his fault. It was late when my phone rang. The office was quiet, most of my employees having left hours ago, but I remained behind, reviewing final reports and watching the inevitable collapse of Preston Holdings unfold in real time. I knew who it was before I even checked the screen, Isabella. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the name flashing on my phone. It had been years since she had called me, years since she had even acknowledged my existence outside of the professional world. And now she had no one left. I let it ring twice more before finally answering, keeping my voice calm, controlled. Isabella. A shaky breath. Noah. Her voice wavered, as if she had rehearsed this moment in her head 1,000 times but still couldn't find the right words. I said nothing, waiting.
I made a mistake,
she finally whispered. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how predictable it was. Of course she would come back now. Not when I was struggling, not when I was still building, not when I was the man she deemed unworthy. Now that Liam was gone, now that her perfect world had shattered, now that she had nowhere else to turn, I exhaled slowly, glancing at the city skyline through my window. What do you want, Isabella? She hesitated. Liam is gone, she admitted. And the board forced him out. His assets are frozen. He has nothing left. I heard her swallow, the shame thick in her silence. I need help, Noah. There it was. I should have felt some kind of satisfaction, some kind of twisted pleasure in hearing her beg. But I didn't. I only felt indifference. Years ago, her leaving had shattered me. It had burned through my pride, my trust, and my love until nothing was left. But time had done its job. I had rebuilt. I had become more. And now, she was nothing but a voice from the past. I let the silence stretch between us, making her sit with her own words. Oh, Noah, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my desk. What do you want, Isabella? And I don't know what to do. She let out a shaky breath. Liam ruined everything. The house is being taken. Our accounts are frozen. I have nothing left. I smiled to myself. She wasn't calling because she regretted leaving me. She was calling because she regretted choosing wrong. I rubbed my jaw, feigning consideration. Echun, let me get this straight. You left me for a man you thought was better, built a life with him, looked down on me while I was working for everything I have. And now that he's fallen, you think I'll just, save you? Her breath hitched.
Oh, it's not like that.
Isn't it? I cut her off, my voice steady. Tell me, Isabella, if Liam was still rich, still powerful, would you be calling me right now? The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. She had no answer. I chuckled, shaking my head. That's what I thought. Oh, Noah, she whispered, her voice breaking. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know I made mistakes, but she inhaled shakily, and it was wrong about you. I see that now. I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling. Took you long enough. She let out a soft, humorless laugh. Yeah. For the first time since the call began, I heard something real in her voice. Regret. Not just for what had happened with Liam, but for everything she had miscalculated. She had thought that wealth was the only thing that mattered, that leaving me for Liam was the smart move. But wealth meant nothing without character, without intelligence, without resilience. She had chosen the wrong man, and now she had to live with that. I exhaled slowly. Isabella, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't hate you. I stopped caring a long time ago. Silence. I continued. You were a part of my past. But that's all you are now. The past. Her breath hitched again. I could picture her standing in some dimly lit apartment or a half-empty hotel room, staring at the walls, realizing that this was it, that there was no going back. "Ona Noah," she whispered, "once I don't know what to do." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. Then, in the same calm, even tone, I said the words she never thought she would hear from me. "That's not my problem." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear her breathing, could feel the weight of her realization settling over her like an iron blanket. There was no saving her this time. There was no second chance. She had made her choice years ago, and I had made mine. "So I hope you figure it out," I added simply. And then I hung up. For a long moment I just sat there, staring at my phone. Then slowly, a small, satisfied smile crossed my lips. Because for the first time in years, I felt free. The cafe was small, tucked away on a quiet street just outside the city's financial district. The kind of place that catered to professionals who wanted discretion, where meetings were held over overpriced coffee and whispered conversations. I sat at a table near the window, watching the world outside, the people walking past, the sound of distant traffic, the low hum of chatter from the other patrons. It was a peaceful contrast to the storm that had been brewing for the past few days. Then the door opened, and she walked in. Isabella. She looked different. The perfectly curated image she had always maintained was gone. No designer clothes, no sparkling jewelry, no expensive perfume filling the air around her. Instead, she wore a simple beige coat over a plain blouse and jeans. She looked ordinary, and for the first time in her life she probably felt it too. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on me. For a moment, she just stood there, hesitating, like she was still deciding whether she could go through with this. Then, slowly, she walked over and took the seat across from me. "Hi," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a sip of my coffee. "Isabella." She folded her hands in front of her, fidgeting slightly. I noticed the way she kept glancing at my face, as if searching for something. Recognition, warmth, a remnant of the man she once knew. But there was nothing left for her to find. "And I appreciate you meeting me," she said, forcing a small, nervous smile. "So I wasn't sure if you would." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "Why are we here, Isabella?" Her fingers clenched around her coffee cup. I needed to see you." I didn't respond. I let her feel the silence. She sighed, looking down at the table. After the call, I couldn't stop thinking about everything, about us, about how things ended. She looked up again, her eyes searching mine. "Ain't I regret it, Noah, leaving you, thinking Liam was the better choice." I raised an eyebrow. "It's a better choice?" She flinched slightly but nodded. "Oh, I know, and I was wrong." I remained quiet. She took a deep breath, and I let greed blind me. I thought success was about having the biggest house, the most expensive clothes, the perfect lifestyle. And when I saw you back then, struggling, trying to build something that wasn't guaranteed, I got scared. She exhaled shakily.
"I didn't believe in you the way I should have."
I tapped my fingers against the table, watching her. "And now?" Her lips parted slightly. "Now I see who you really are." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Oh no, Isabella. You see what I've become. There's a difference." She swallowed, her hands tightening around her cup. "Maybe. But I miss you, Noah." I let the words settle between us, unfazed. Then I leaned forward slightly, my voice calm. "Tell me something, Isabella. If Liam had never lost everything, would you be sitting here right now?" She froze, her eyes darting away, her body stiffening. I nodded, a slow, knowing smirk crossing my lips. "That's what I thought." She inhaled sharply. "It's not like that." I tilted my head. "Isn't it? Let's be honest here, Isabella. You only missed me because you lost. If Liam's company had continued to thrive, if you were still living in that mansion, still wearing your designer clothes, still sipping champagne at fancy galas, you wouldn't have thought about me once." Her breath caught in her throat. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. I gave her a small, almost pitying smile. "You don't miss me. You miss the fact that I ended up winning, and now you want to rewrite history. You want to pretend that you would have chosen differently if you had known how things would turn out." I leaned back in my chair. "But that's the thing about choices, Isabella. You don't get to change them just because you don't like the outcome." Tears welled in her eyes. Oh, please." There was a time when hearing her beg would have meant something, would have hurt. But now I felt nothing. I exhaled slowly, glancing out the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. A fitting end. Then I turned back to her, my expression unreadable. I don't do second chances. Her breath hitched. She blinked rapidly, her lips parting in disbelief. Noah. She had assumed I would take her back. She had thought that maybe, just maybe, she could say the right things, wear the right regret, and I would fall back into her arms. But I wasn't that man anymore. I had been willing to love her once. I had been willing to fight for her. But that door had closed the moment she walked away. Her fingers trembled as she set her coffee down. She stared at me, realization dawning over her like a slow, painful burn. Dean thought, she let out a broken laugh. CC Mom, thought you'd still be waiting for me. I didn't even blink. I wasn't. Her shoulders slumped, the weight of her choices finally crushing her. For years she had believed she had won, that she had made the right decision, that I was the one who had lost. But now she knew the truth. I stood up, pulling a few bills from my wallet and tossing them onto the table. Take care, Isabella. She watched me, her eyes filled with things she would never be able to say, regret, shame, loss. I walked out of the cafe without looking back. Because the past no longer mattered, only the future did. As I stepped out of the cafe, the cool evening air greeted me like an old friend. The sky was painted in hues of deep orange and fading blue, the last remnants of daylight stretching across the city skyline. It was quiet out here, peaceful in a way that mirrored my own mind. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. Isabella was gone, not just physically but in every sense that mattered. She no longer occupied space in my life. No more lingering thoughts about the past. No more questioning whether I had been enough. No more waiting. I walked toward my car, slipping my hands into my pockets as my mind replayed everything that had led to this moment. I had built something out of nothing. I had turned loss into power. I had become the man she never believed I could be. And I had done it all without her. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. I pulled it out, glancing at the screen. Lucas. I smirked, already knowing what this was about. Tell me it's official, I said as I answered. It's official, Lucas replied, amusement dripping from his voice. Preston Holdings is done. Their stock just hit rock bottom, and their biggest investors have publicly announced they're pulling out. I chuckled, shaking my head. That was faster than I expected. Liam didn't give them much of a choice. The moment the board kicked him out, the media tore him apart. Turns out people don't take too kindly to reckless CEOs who lose $20 billion in potential investments. I opened my car door, sliding into the driver's seat as I leaned back. And Isabella? Lucas let out a low whistle. Last I heard, she packed up and disappeared. Guess she figured out pretty quickly that no one wants to be associated with a sinking ship. I wasn't surprised. Isabella had always been a survivalist first and foremost. She clung to power, to wealth, to anything that ensured she was on the winning side. But what happens when there's nowhere left to run? Lucas hesitated before speaking again. Oh, she called me, you know. I frowned slightly. What? Yeah. Not long after she called you. She asked if there was a way to, fix things. To at least rebuild her reputation. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. Even now, she was looking for a way out. What did you tell her? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Lucas laughed, and I told her she was talking to the wrong person. I smirked. Could. There was a short pause, then Lucas asked, more seriously this time, so, how do you feel? I thought about it, about everything, about the past few years, about the moments that had tested me, about the man I had become because of it. And for the first time, my answer was simple. Free. Lucas chuckled. That's what I figured. I glanced out the windshield, watching as the city lights flickered to life one by one. When we should celebrate. Already ahead of you. The team's at the lounge downtown. You in? I smiled. Oh yeah, I'm in. After hanging up, I sat there for a moment, letting the silence settle over me. This was it. This was the moment where the past finally stopped mattering. I wasn't the man Isabella had left behind anymore. I wasn't the underdog. I wasn't chasing revenge. I had won. And more than that, I had moved on. With a quiet exhale, I started the car and drove toward the future. My future.